Okay. I kind of wish I had a microphone. My voice is kind of going. It's been a busy 24 hours. Really great to be here. I've never been here. I would get asked a lot if I've been to Ely. No, I have not. I really wish I could see it during the day. Can you hear me? I have to yell. Okay. Bummer. I'm feeling pretty close. But anyways, maybe I'll come back because obviously you have very close to here. You have this very wonderful treasure that I need to experience, the boundary waters. So I will hopefully be back. But in the meantime, I'm gonna just talk to you a little bit about these slides behind me and about the book and about what it means to have copper mining in your backyard. Because I literally had it in my backyard. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit. There'll be time for some questions and answers and all that kind of stuff, okay? And I'll just kind of go for it. And if you heard me talk before, which a couple of you have, just enjoy it, okay? Just enjoy it. Just act like it's it's the first time ever. Okay, so we're gonna start with numbers. And the reason I start with these numbers is because this is a very complex issue, copper mining. It's very complex. Any mining is complex, but this is really complex because it does have a personal level and a global level to all of it. And you really have to kind of understand all that. And part of understanding all that is understanding your role in it. And you all have a role in it. And I know you've heard this in a condescending way from mining companies, which is, you have a cell phone, so shut up, you can't talk to me. That's really simplistic, and that's not what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to tell you is, there's a point to this, and the end of this talk is that philosophically we have to have a conversation. The conversation is, we are cockroaches consuming at a level that is crazy. I don't expect any of you to go home tonight to throw all your stuff away, okay? And you're going to drive your car and you're going to go on an airplane somewhere, and it's okay. But it is a conversation that we as a society need to start having. And to get a grip on that, there's some numbers. So what am I doing? Oh yeah, okay, here it is, okay. Okay, that's not a number. That, do you know, anybody know what that is? No? Good guess, but no. No, it's not strip mining. This is, it's kind of blurry, I know, but this is the Kennecott mine outside Salt Lake City. This is a massive slide that happened late last winter. Huge slide, caused a lot of problems at this mine, and it's quite dramatic, and they had a lot of issues, environmental issues because of that actually. Okay, numbers, I'm going to read them because I want to talk about some of them, but you're more than welcome to read. I know that seems a little kindergartenish, but we're going to do it. I'm not going to read every one, but things like 50 pounds of copper in your car. 100 pounds of copper if you got a Prius, probably about 100 pounds, okay? So as you go green energy, there's a little more copper involved. That's okay, you should go green energy, I'm just letting you know. Every house, 400 pounds. If you use a greenhouse, it's going to be more. Like if you're really using a lot of green energy, you're probably going to use more. This one's really amazing, 747, 9,000 pounds or 135 miles of copper in that plane. Every plane, that's that size. 200,000 pounds in a nuclear submarine. A bar of chocolate's got a little copper in it. That's nice. You got to have, by the way, just in case you don't know this, you need to have copper to be a human being in your blood. So there's a little bit of copper you need. It's just you don't want a lot of copper, because then that'll kill you. Top one is something I put in here just for in case you don't know that China built a mine in Afghanistan, which is guarded by us, which is nice. I think unnecessary for us to be doing that, but we bid for the mine. This is Afghanistan, by the way. We bid for the mine, but they sold it to China, and now we're guarding it, paid for by you. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, you got it. Oh, wait, hold on a second. There's more there. These are the ones that really we're all involved with really heavily. Is The computer, 1.5 pounds. There's a lot of computers. 1 billion, there'll be 2 billion very soon within 10 years. This is how many tons are in computers right now in place in the world. And then you got the cell phone with 16 grams. There's 1 billion phones, and I don't know if you caught the wind of the new iPhone 4 or 5S, whatever it is, was 9 million in like a weekend. So my point is, this cycle of copper mining, you're worried about it right here, because this is right in your backyard. You're worried about it right here on the boundary waters. I get it. But you need to understand this is a huge issue. It's a huge issue both on the supply side and the demand side. And we have to have, if you're going to have an intelligent conversation where they can't condescendingly tell you, you have a cell phone, so shut up, you have to understand there's a party who has to absorb that. Say, okay, I do have a cell phone, but that doesn't mean we have to mine here in these waters. So you need, it's important to know that. You can't just say no. You have to kind of adjust that attitude, in my opinion, to have a conversation. That means you can say no. You just got to have a little understanding of it. The first one, there's something here I'm gonna get to in a second. 5.5 million miles of copper plumbing since 1963 in American homes. That is crazy. Now, I don't know if any of you, I follow copper really closely. There's a scientific study by a very, the American scientist, what I forgot what the journal's called, came out about a month ago. I don't know if you guys worry about this, I do, because my entire older part of my family is dying or dead from it. It has now been shown that copper has a trigger device in Alzheimer's. The worry from the scientists isn't the copper you get from your food. That's like normal. There's copper in beans, and there's copper in sunflower seeds, and there's copper in some various everything, a lot of things we eat, and that's okay. We're kind of built for that. The problem they think, and they don't know this, but they're really worried, is that it's coming from the copper tubing in our houses that carries our water. And it's starting to have this effect. We have a huge amount of Alzheimer's, we have this copper, and they're not point blank saying that, but that is what they're trying to say in the States, what they're talking about. There'll probably be a couple more years of studies, but if it comes to be that is a problem, then we have a serious, serious problem. I don't expect you all to go rip out your copper pipe, by the way, and put in PEX. It's okay. Don't go home and do that. It's another thing that is in play here. This one is, this is the one I don't think the mining companies put in the pamphlet that you see around town. Hard rock mining, copper and gold, is the most toxic form of pollution in the United States. And it has been for many, many decades. 30% is actually down. It used to be around 50% was attributed to gold or copper mining. And there's a reason for that. It's an incredibly toxic process. It doesn't matter if it's underground or above ground. It's a toxic process. Okay? There's no way around it. It's just the way it is. Half a ton of copper gets, about 100 tons of earth gives you about half a ton of copper. This copper is okay. It's this stuff that's not okay. It's the waste that you're going to leave on the side of your areas. The tailings and the waste rock is really going to be the destruction you suffer from in 50 years to 100 years. That's going to be the big problem. The Superfund sites, which you're probably all aware of, is 156 of them around the country, that between $7 and $24 billion, which of course, back to the Afghanistan question, who's going to pay for it? Us. All these really great ideas that you always hear in copper or gold, new sites, hey, we'll get them to put a bond, or they got to put a really lot of money up before they can mine. That is not new to hear. That has been like a plan for decades in this country, and it never really, really happens at a level that fixes the problem that arises later. They put up $15 million. That's not even a beginning of a conversation to what they might do in the future. Anyways, it's all going to get better. We're going to have a good time here, guys. Sorry. Again, this goes back to who we are as a civilization. This is the production of copper, basically over the last 100 years. This right here is going to go up and up and up. Okay? Because we want more, and China and India, places like that, are growing and growing and growing. They're becoming more and more urban. And as the Chinese populations and Indians get more modern, more urban, you're going to see a lot more copper. So, just in case you don't know it, I just put this in there. Chile's the big player in the copper world. They're the ones that really produce, most of the world's copper comes from Chile, about 35%. And that's been true for more than 100 years. They've always been very, very, that's what they do. This is basically the national economy of Chile is copper. Those guys that were stuck in that mine, it was a gold mine, but it was a copper mine too. And just for a little fact, it's kind of fun, I think you read it in the book, if you read the book, is that socks, do you remember? Then Chile's pretty good about this stuff. They know how to save people in a mine, but do you remember when they were stuck down there was a lot of worry about, well, there was a lot of worry about a lot of things, but one of them was that they were going to get trench foot. So they had a hole, remember they had a hole, they had created a little hole to send food and light. They sent them socks laced in copper because copper in socks like that it keeps away bacteria. Because remember, copper is a fantastic killer of bacteria. It's a really amazing, this goes into the next thing. Copper is an amazing metal. It's totally phenomenal metal. It is, there's no way around it. You know, you've read in the book also, the hospitals are starting to convert back to using copper on their doorknobs and their bed rails because it kills MRSA instantaneously. And that's a really cool thing about copper, which creates a complex problem of copper mining. And this is Bisbee, and if you read the book, you know this is where I lived. I didn't live in this part of town. This is called Warren. I lived up here. This is the pit right here in the shadow. I lived up here. There used to be a big mountain here, and that became the pit. And this is the waste rock pile. That is the mountain. That's the mountain. And it's really quite high. It's maybe 150 feet high. And it has been leaking sulfuric acid drainage for decades, right into that whole neighborhood. They just started to mitigate that and kind of slow it down, but it has been a real problem. The huge tailing piles of Bisbee are down here. They're absolutely enormous. They just put a cap on it after 30, 40 years of being in the open, which has caused an enormous sulfuric acid plume racing toward this aquifer of Bisbee. And it's going to reach the aquifer. There's no way of stopping it. They've already admitted that. They just are digging deep holes to try to divert it, and then they're also trying to find new sources of water for the town. But the wells that we use are pretty much doomed. So, and that's what happens with copper mining. And this has taken 40 years. And you know, this goes back to the question of where you're at right now. It might not be anything bad that happens in 20 years, and maybe half of you in this room are dying or dead by then. But in 50 years or 70 years, if you want to pass this thing on, this thing meaning this town and this area, you have to consider that. It's going to be a problem. And I don't know who's read the book and who hasn't read the book, so we'll act like I don't know. That's Bisbee, really cute town. This was an enormous mine, really big, world-class mine. At the height of its mining days, there was about 25,000 people there, and now there's about 5 or 6. But it has, I think, pretty much like Ely. I don't know enough about Ely, but it reinvented itself over 40 years to be a really, really thriving, interesting artist colony. And it's really cool, and I really love it, and I have a lot of friends there, and it's kind of heartbreaking not to still be there, but I'm not. And the reason I'm not is because, and the reason I wrote this book is because I had bought a house in Bisbee, and I married my wife, and I married my wife. She's great. I think I've told a couple people this. I met her in a poker game. I walked into this big building right around the corner here, and we had a poker game every Thursday night. And gosh, she was like 6 foot, Texan, kind of a badass. And really good at poker. I mean, I'm pretty good, but she was beating us. So I was like, wow, okay. But anyways, we got married and we bought a house and we had a kid, and then she was pregnant with another kid. And when we bought the house, we remodeled the house. It was a beautiful mining shack, kind of. And then I started to build a garden. And I took a long time building it because it was the drip system. What a nightmare. But I built the garden, and then I ate the food, and that kind of went on. And I got really sick. And at the same time, the mining company had started to reclaim to study all the soil in Bisbee. They knew it was poisonous, the soil. So they're going house to house, neighborhood to neighborhood testing. And people were really scared. It was a lot of something you might see in this kind of town. Everybody thought, oh, they're just testing our soil to see if they got more gold and they're going to mine on your property. All that kind of chitter chatter. But then everybody started buying into getting their soil tested, because if you didn't get it tested and you wanted to sell your house, you couldn't sell your house unless you got your soil tested. So you wanted them to pay for it. So anyways, when I got really sick, the mining company had already tested my soil, and it came back high levels of arsenic and lead. At this point, they spent about $60 million over the last 5 years doing almost every single house in Bisbee. Every public school, every single thing in Bisbee has been replaced. They didn't do that because they're nice, okay? They did that because when they bought when they bought Phelps Dodge, they owned the debt of this. They already knew that this stuff was poisonous, and they had been under rule to fix it, and Phelps Dodge didn't do it. So Freeport was under rule to do it, under law, under a federal action. So they fixed all of our soil. And when they started the rumors that they were going to open the mine, that's when I decided as a writer to first of all understand where I lived and do I wanted to continue living here. And that was a real hard thing for me to grapple with that. And at the same time, I wanted to understand. I felt like an idiot. Here I am living in this town, and there's an open pit right here. And I live in a copper belt, one of the biggest copper belts in the world, is southern Arizona, and I didn't know a thing about it. You guys shouldn't know anything about it. People who live in southern Arizona should know a lot about it, and I didn't know a thing. And I felt kind of stupid, so that led me into a deep journey through copper. And one of the first things I wanted to do was go see copper communities. What would it be like if Bisbee opened again? What would it be like to live in a mining town? So I went to mining towns. And they are absolutely the most depressing places I've ever been in my life. And I've been in a lot of places, and they were horrible. Horrible places. Morenci, Arizona. Has everybody been to Morenci? You been to Morenci? Were you a miner? No. Hey, I don't know. So you just traveled through? Yep. It's a very unusual place to go to.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you're out east and you're at the Black River, you go fishing.
Ah,
you go south.
Well, of course. Yeah. I'm sure. I don't know if you stopped. It's weird. It's hard to stop there.
Yeah, you don't really stop.
It's a hard place to stop.
Yeah. Unless you're buying liquor.
Yeah. It's a company town. It's a very unusual place. Company towns are kind of out of style now in America, but it's a company town. They own everything. But boy, it is a depressing place. The advertising that when mining companies come to a place, they like to tell you that it's going to be prosperous. They're going to give you jobs. They're going to make the place rock and roll. It's going to be a boom town. It's going to be cool. As Reed told me on the way up here by a guy named Tom Powers, I have to agree with him. I've never been to a mining community that was prosperous. I've never seen it. And I've been to a lot of mining communities, and I don't know where that town is. They don't exist. They keep you at a certain level, and that's it. And the big jobs, the big money jobs, are going to some geologist that lives in Vancouver or lives in Johannesburg. So this little thing they sell would go away in a heartbeat if anybody took a trip out to southern Arizona and went to all the mining communities. You would see how basically vapid they are of kind of soul. Not to say the miners aren't proud, and they're very, very proud of the tradition, and they should be. They worked really hard. But the community itself is not really thriving. And then remember, this is a market that's tied to the global market. It's not tied to the guy you're talking to at Polymet or Twin Metals. Whoever that guy is irrelevant. My point is, as soon as there's a dip in the copper market, that mine will shut. Maybe 30 days, maybe 60 days, maybe a year. Whatever it is, you're going to sit there and wherever that town is, wherever that place is, just going to just go into idleness. And whatever else was there won't be there anymore. So you have a one-trick pony town that is just not very much fun. So that's, I think, what you're trying to avoid. Or if you're not avoiding, you might want to consider avoiding it. That's a pit in Bisbee. Very poisonous. The reason it's not filling up as much as, like, say, Berkeley in Montana is it has 2,700 miles of tunnels underneath this of Bisbee. It's one of the largest tunnel systems in the world. 2,700 miles. What it is it goes, each one of these benches, if you could see this really clearly, you would see tiny little windows in here. And when this open pit was made long after the underground tunnels. So basically when they scraped into the earth, they went through each layer of tunnels. They're basically 100 feet, tunnels, 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 and it goes down about 2,000 feet. And it goes for miles, and it goes actually into Mexico underneath the border. And they're filling up with all the water. All the water has been going in there for 40 years. There's an enormous amount of water under Bisbee, but it's totally poisonous. You know, the hydrologist told me, hey, you could feed a city from this place, but you'd have to spend $500 billion getting a water treatment plant to fix it. So it's not worth it. It's just a big poisonous pit down there. So that's the pit in Bisbee. I like to talk about this mine. Has anybody heard about this mine? It's Grasberg mine in Indonesia. I know you've read the book, you've heard about it, but yeah. I like to talk about this mine because I want you to understand whoever is going to mine in Minnesota, if they mine here, because trust me, whoever the junior company is, I don't know who they are, it doesn't really matter, because they won't mine. They don't know how to mine. They're going to sell it, or they're already involved with a bigger company if it's going to happen. Whoever that company is, I can assure you, is operating around the world in ways that would just horrify you. The mining industry outside this country is something from it's like biblical. It's something you can't imagine. Slave labor, people being killed, paid $1 a day. I mean, there's all this stuff going on, and it's the same company. Freeport-McMoRan. I have a lot of friends in Freeport-McMoRan. That's the company that owns the Bisbee mine, and basically every mine in Arizona, and they're the biggest copper mining company in the world. Freeport-McMoRan. They own this mine. People I know work here. I can't go there, nobody can go there. It's absolutely shut down to the outside world, controlled by the Indonesian military. It's been closed down for 30 years. No outsiders have been there, except for people they invite in. They control the only road, it's 100 miles, they own it, they built it. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal engineering feat. It's absolutely phenomenal. 18,000 workers work here. It's at 15,000 feet in a glacier. I don't even know how you find it, and it goes really straight down in this glacier. And they've just torn the top off this mountain. And the problem is that there's old indigenous, just as Papua New Guinea, there's old indigenous tribes that live here that are being killed in just a basic killing way. They're also being poisoned because they dump 300,000 tons of waste every single day into the rivers, which are down below. There's two river systems. There's 300,000 tons of waste per day go in those rivers. That has created a 30-mile sulfuric acid plume in the sea from here. Total dead zone. And I think you've also read in the book that the person who owns this, CEO of Freeport-McMoRan, was asked about this, and he said, don't worry about it. It's like me pissing in the sea. That was his answer when someone said, should you stop doing this? And you have a very limited access to people in the mining company. They're a very closed society. It's not unlike the oil business. You're not going to have a conversation with the CEO of Exxon or Shell, right? Mining companies are the same way. So it's hard to get a glimpse into how they think. But that statement, one of the only statements that kind of has leaked out of his mouth for many, many years, is a glimpse into how he thinks. These are people that believe they're masters of the universe. These are hedge fund people. These are people that make $50 million a year and think that they're saving the world because they're giving us the products we want. And you are all just stupid and irrelevant to what he's going to do. He's going to come in here and get what he needs and leave, and he's never going to meet any of you. He's never going to meet anything. If he destroys the place, he's never going to know because he's never going to visit here. So that's who you're up against. That's who these people are. And I said this today in Duluth. I am not trying to tell you that the person that you meet here is bad. Like the guy, whoever the person is from Twin Metals, might be a really nice person. I don't know. I'm not going to judge him. I've never met the person you're coming in contact with. But the person that runs around maybe the person manning the station at wherever that is in St. Paul or maybe up here, is maybe a nice person. They're just hired to do a job. They're just hired to talk to you in a nice way, to say, hey, we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to make the water okay. We're going to try to... That person is absolutely freaking irrelevant to anything that you're doing up here. That person is hired to talk to you in a nice way. Just remember that. You're not going to see the monster behind these people in your entire life, ever. They go to shareholder meetings. Unless you buy shareholder stock and go to those meetings, which are usually somewhere else, you're never going to meet them. This is still Grasberg, largest gold mine on earth, third largest copper mine. I was asked today by some newspaper guy, what's the profit? What's the game plan in copper mines? How do they make money? Because it's a big outlay, in the beginning. This mine has been working for 30 years. It's by far the most profitable mine in the world. They pay for the mine and everything, all these 18,000 miners off the copper. I don't know if you know the price of gold, but I'm sure you can take a big guess that it's a lot of money. $1,500 an ounce or whatever the hell it is. These people, the amount of gold coming out of this mine is astronomical. And it's just pure money. And they pay for it off copper. So that's a place they're never going to give up. Just for a little tidbit, they have spent $16 billion over the last decade building an underground world. They're done up here. They've played it out. And now they're going to go underneath. And they'll probably be down here for 50 years. So that's going to be around a long time. That's the road there. Which, by the way, who made that road? I don't want to get into it too much, but it's really ugly. You think you can escape this stuff, but you can't. You think, that's not true. It is. It's true that Twin Metals hired, or whoever the hell hired, or I forgot who it is, Glencore hired Tony Hayward or whatever from BP. That's not true. Yeah, it is. How can you hire that guy to be? That's insane. Well, this entire mine was constructed by Bechtel. Do you know who that is? Okay. Do you remember the Gulf Wars and all the other wars? Bechtel. Do you know who sits on the board of Freeport-McMoRan? Henry Kissinger. All right. When President Clinton pulled the international insurance from Freeport-McMoRan for violating endless environmental standards overseas and for hiring a military, they withdrew the international insurance from them, which is the first time ever in the history of America that's been done to a company. And the next day, Henry Kissinger was working the channels, and they got their insurance back. And just because they wanted to show the U.S. government we don't care, then they canceled the insurance because the mine's worth way more than the insurance, which was $100 million. So they just said, F-O. So it does work like that, unfortunately, doesn't it? And here's Grasberg again, and I just want to point out these because if you have a mine here, which you're very used to with the iron ore, I know. But you're going to have a lot of these here if you do this, and they will cause you a lot of, they'll cause you a nightmare. Morenci, Arizona is the biggest mine in the United States by production, not physical size, that's Kennecott. Biggest production mine of copper is Morenci, Arizona. And it has 90 trucks. They're the biggest trucks in the world are made in Morenci, that they developed them. And they are just enormous. They're kind of cool to watch, like in a really little boy way, but you sure don't want them near your area. You know, Arizona is kind of a strange beast. Arizona was built on copper. It didn't really, that's who kind of built Arizona. And a lot of Arizona, especially southern Arizona, was isolated desert pockets. Morenci, as our man here can testify, is in the middle of nowhere. There's no reason to go to Morenci in your entire life, unless you're going up 191 to a beautiful area. You're not going to go to Morenci. So if you're in Morenci, you're mining, or you're part of the mine, or you're doing something at the mine. And to me, that's like, okay, that's a good place to mine. That makes sense to me. If you get close to Tucson or Phoenix, that doesn't make any sense to me, because there's a lot of people that live there, and you're going to screw up the water. That seemed to be a really good, simplistic way to go about mining, but it's starting to encroach. The mining companies are getting closer and closer, I think, to water spots and to populations. There's a mine that's trying to be built in southern Arizona, very near Tucson, that will admittedly disrupt 20% of the water discharge that comes to Tucson, which will be poisoned, and they've admitted this. And Tucson's like, that's 20% of our water. And so what are they doing? They're going to go buy water from the Colorado River and try to replace it. Well, I have a news flash for you. Unlike Minnesota, we don't have water. It's really tough when you do this game of water in Arizona. You really are playing a very dangerous game. So, you know, but when they want copper, they go for it. But this brings us to Pebble Mine, my favorite. My personal favorite is Pebble Mine. And the reason I want to talk about Pebble Mine is because, has anybody been up to Bristol Bay?
We live there.
You do?
Yeah.
Where do you live?
King Salmon.
Oh Lord, that's fantastic. All right, I guarantee these people are against Pebble Mine, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. King Salmon's my hub. Okay.
Red salmon.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay. The reason I talk about Pebble Mine, because I know it's not here, but it's a very important mine to focus on, because for a couple reasons. One, to understand how to fight this battle. This mine is not over with yet. There's still a battle, but I believe that we're winning. We, meaning people don't want the mine. How that has happened is incredibly important for anybody else that wants to go about this. And the second reason is, I've been a little disheartened. Everywhere I travel, the people are in the situation you're in, which is other places that exist in this country. There's a feeling like, oh, you know, hey, this is happening to me, and I guess I'm alone in this, and I don't understand. But they don't know about any other mine. There's a lot of places that are suffering under this fear, and they don't know what's happening, and they are really wanting some other people to know about their situation. And Pebble Mine is a mine that, if it goes through, if Pebble Mine were to be approved by the EPA and allowed to be built, then I can say to you right now, don't buy my book. I'm going to go to the bar. You're welcome to join me. Let's get the hell out of here, because nothing is going to stop them ever. If you cannot stop Pebble Mine from being a mine, this doesn't matter. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. Because Pebble Mine is at the headwaters of the world's biggest fishery. It's also, you know, 40 million sockeye come in here. Half the world's sockeye come from Bristol Bay. Half of those ones are born in Lake Iliamna. The mine would be 14 miles from Lake Iliamna. I've told this story today. I got to tell it again, because I went on a helicopter tour with the CEO of Pebble Partnership. His name is John Shively. He's very famous in Alaska. And I was on that helicopter with a bunch of mining executives. Which, again, I have to tell you, I have no idea why they keep letting me on these damn helicopters with them. I mean, I'm like, guys, you know that I'm against this mine. You know I'm writing a book. And, but I'm pretty good at, like, you know, being semi-neutral. Even though at that point I wasn't. I was like, John, I am against this mine, man. I'm against this mine. He's like, oh, you know, he believes. He's going to convince me. I'm like, let's come on. Hear our story. So I'm like, all right, let's go on this tour. So I took the chartered jet from Anchorage and took the chartered jet or the helicopter, a very nice helicopter. We get up there, and the funny part is that they, 7 people from the mining industry quickly forget you're in the helicopter. And they're like chatting to each other on the headphones, and they're telling each other stuff that I just can't believe. Like the one today, who was it today? Someone interviewed me, said, tell me about Pebble Beach. And I thought, do you mean Pebble Mine? And she said, oh yeah, I'm sorry. And, but that's the worst, here's the worst part. When they were up there telling the guys on the helicopter, the thing, he's like, you know, he's not talking to me, he's talking to the other guys. He's like, you know, when we first got up here, we were going to name this place Pebble Beach. I'm like, just tell me, I don't know, what? Where's the humor in this? You know, because it looked like a place we could play golf, and it was really fun. And then he's like, but that was not a good idea. So we called it Pebble Mine. I'm like, but this is, you know, it's a joke. It's like fun. It's not 40 million fish, and it's not an entire culture of people that won't have a life. It's their backyard. It's their playpen. It's their sand trap. That's what it is. So, anyways, I went on this tour, and I was explained on top of a mountaintop, which is probably like that's beautiful. Okay, like we were up. This is the mine site of Pebble Mine. It would be the mine site. Sorry. And they love to tell you things like we've made no footprints here. Everything we've flown in everything by helicopter for all the drill holes. I don't care. What does it have to do? I don't give a rat's ass. It's still going to build an enormous mine here. We were up here on the helicopter. We landed right here to look down at this site. And I said, you know what, John, or you guys, can you explain to me how Lake Iliam is down here? How is this not going to get to the lake? It's 14 miles away. And he said, well, it's not Grandpa's mine. We got this, we got that, we got the whole thing worked out. We're on the water side, man. We're on the fishery side. We got this. I said, okay. This is tundra. It's tundra. Has anybody walked on tundra? You're basically just walking on water. It's just water. It's a water carpet. In Arizona, we have hard rock, really, really hard rock. It took 50 or 40 years for that sulfuric acid to go drainage to go from that tailings pile outside Bisbee to our water source, which is only about 8 miles away. Okay? This is tundra. It doesn't have to go down 1,000 feet to the ground fissure cracks that slowly go to the aquifer. It will just roll down this is tundra. It's just going to have to go that deep, and it's going to go right to the damn lake. And it's been proven that copper, very small amounts of copper, it doesn't kill salmon directly. It doesn't they don't just die. They go into basically a slight paralysis so they can't avoid prey. Now, if you know anything about salmon, if they're not running around and getting out of the way of something that's going to eat them, then you won't have a lot of salmon the next run. They kind of disappear. So it basically makes them very vulnerable. That's not to even mention the other toxins that might be in the river, like uranium and arsenic and cesium. There's a lot of things that come with copper. So anyways, I just was like, if you can sit there and tell me that you're going to stop this to go to the mine, then it's a level of insanity that I don't know how to address. But they have something you guys don't have, and it's one of the things that everybody's been asking me in these last talks. You know, you have to elevate the conversation of the boundary waters to a national level. You have to get it out of your backyard. Because if it's only about your backyard, there's a lot of backyards, you know, and it's not, people aren't going to care outside of this area. You have to get it up to you have to raise the bar. Now in Alaska, they had an advantage. They had a world resource. They had the biggest fishery in the world. And they also have Native Americans that have been living off it for 6,000 years continuously, and are the only people on planet Earth that actually live off salmon. So they have some pretty strong cultural and economic things to fight with. And that's why we've had an enormous amount of support to stop the mine. I think you have something in the boundary waters. You have a very special place that was built to be, I mean not built, but there was a law put in place to protect it, and there's a reason for that. So to go back on that is, you know, kind of a violation of the spirit of that whole concept. To build, if you're going to build, I believe this is like the Twin Metals. I'm only talking about Twin Metals right now, but I believe it's like 2 miles from the, is that correct? 2 miles. Okay. 2 miles is going to disrupt your boundary waters. I can guarantee it. And if I'm wrong, you bring me back here in 10 years and I'll buy you all a drink, or more than that, whatever I'm going to do. I'll buy all the property that your property is not worth. So, and I just put this in here because this is your guys' world, and I don't want it to turn into that world, which it will. Massive tailing pile. You know, this is a really complex issue, and I started with that, and it's no easy answers. There really is not an easy answer. Mining companies are machines. They drive a hard game. They're not playing badminton. These are people that really know the game plan. They know what they're doing. I don't mean they know how to mine right. I mean they know what to do, how to get something in place. I've told the other places this. I know the pitches. I've heard the pitches. I've heard them. It's not Grandpa's mine. It's we know better technology, new jobs. What else? What's some other good ones? No, don't tell me. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. No, the better one for that is the 500 years. Now listen, I'm just gonna. Does anybody actually believe that? 500 years? 500 years. 500 years. 500 years. 500 years. What in the hell has been in existence for 500 years that is not, like besides the ocean, 500 years? It certainly isn't a company. Okay, the companies don't play that game. That's just a nonsense thing they're telling you. I'm telling you right now. And even if it wasn't nonsense, your state will screw it up. It's a state government. If you put a 500, let's say they put enough money, let's even pretend that they were to put an enormous amount of money into a state bond that would, have 12 guys at the mine for 500 years protecting that mine. You can almost guarantee that in 80 years, the state's going to go, we're a little short on money over here, so we're just going to take that money, which we'll replace on the next round, and you know how this goes. So that's just, I can't even believe that conversation's even in play. I think that will come back to bite them, actually. That's an overplay. That's ridiculous. So, they say stuff like that. They say stuff like, the jobs is probably a big one here, right? Yeah. How many people think that you have more than 300 or 400 jobs that are attached to the boundary water? Right? Right. Lodges, canoe riggers. I don't really know. I don't really know the system here, but I'm sure there's a lot of action, right? Right. I'm sure that it's more than 300 or 400 jobs. I don't know why that even attracts people. I don't get it, because it's 300 or 400 jobs at the best. It's 300 or 400 jobs, and probably 200 of those are local. So what are you giving up? All that for that? That's just, I don't even understand the way that's a conversation. I do understand. Mining people are very proud. Mining people are very stuck to a nostalgia. Southern Arizona is absolutely riddled with mining towns. That people are very proud of those mining towns. The miners that grew up there are very proud. But you know what? I've also met those people, and I've been in rooms full of miners who are yelling at me. And I've had people stand up on the side from a mining town and say, you know what? Bullshit. My dad died of cancer here. My mom died of cancer. So I don't, I've had that. I've had that conversation with people. So that nostalgia is kind of, it's old and it's rooted, but I don't think it's real. I think it's holding on to an image of the past that doesn't exist anymore. If I talk to old miners about Bisbee, it was a great place to raise your family. Kids were running around. It was really nice. They really loved that. But if you were to go back to 1950 and Ozzie and Harriet came out in the streets of Ely, it's not going to happen. It's a different world now. It's not going to go back. It's going to be a different world when they start mining here for sulfide mining. It is. You might have a few jobs, but the jobs you have now might go away. So, I try to tell people that we're in a global conversation about copper mining. I'm not sure of whether you should mine here or not. What I'm telling you is going to change the game. It will change the face of this place. If mining happens here, if mining does happen here, then I guess you'll make the best of it and you'll figure it out. But it's going to change this place. It is. And I know a lot of people in the mining business, and I like them, but that doesn't mean that I agree with what they're doing. I also don't have an answer, and I wish I did. I wish I had an answer to what we could replace this toxic material with, not copper itself, but what's attached to it, and I don't really have one. And that's really a bummer for me. I just want to end by saying that I did this the other night I talked about this the other night in Minneapolis, but people in Pebble Mine have got a story to tell. They told a story, right? I heard it today in that little gathering down in, where were we? Sustainable. Heard it today. Steve, they're going to do some video testimonies of people saying why they love Ely, and just little snippets, and they're going to put them on the like a looped television. So when you walk in, you hear a story, which is way more effective than anything on that table. When you hear a story, because the story is really what grabs people, and people in Pebble Mine figured that out, and they started to tell a story about fish and about a culture. And you've all got a story, and those are the stories you got to figure out to start telling people. Those are the stories that actually people listen to. They start to tune in, and I think that's what you need to figure out what that is and get it up at a higher level. I told this the other day, and it kind of relates to my other books, but I'm going to tell it to you guys right now, and I'm going to tell you this because it's my story, and I never really told you my story, who I am. Okay, like you're like, who's this guy? What does he know? My story is as quick as I can tell it, but an interesting way, is that I grew up on a farm in Northern California, a produce farm, like a fruit trees, and a worm farm. It was a worm farm. So we had worms for fishing. So I'd out there packing billions of worms into these things, and the guys would come and buy and we had billions of worms. And we were dirt poor, white trash farmers, really. And I just wanted to travel the world. That's all I wanted to do. Just wanted to get out of there, travel the world. So right after college, man, I was gone. 6 days after college, one-way ticket to Asia, I was gone. Lived in Asia for 2 years, studied Chinese, and made money teaching English, and then traveled and traveled and traveled and traveled. Built a house in Indonesia, just had a great time in life. I came home, went to Alaska, worked in the cannery in Nak. And that was in like 1990. And I met a girl who worked in the egg house, and I worked in the ovens. And she was beautiful, and we fell in love, and I chased her down to Santa Cruz, and she got pregnant, and then she had a car accident, and everybody died. The story continues, though. This is the reason I'm telling you this story. I went into an absolute tailspin of life. Wanted to die. Didn't know how to keep living. So what did I do? The most sensible thing you can possibly imagine. I went directly into a war. I went to the Bosnian War, and I stayed 2 years in Sarajevo. And I tried to just dissolve in there and just give everything I had. But in there, I found stories. These stories of these people were unbelievable. Unbelievable. It just moved me beyond anything that I was suffering. I was like, I cannot believe the stories I'm hearing from these people. Just as lives, really simple things. So I decided to do something about it with a guy. I had $200. That's all I had. I had no connections to anything in the world. And I faked my way. Do you know the band U2? Mm-hmm. All right. I wrote a fake letter to them. And I got a fake fax saying I was the editor of the TV station of Sarajevo. Saying that, I pretended I was this guy named Sinad. And I said, I want to come meet you guys to put you in connection with Sarajevo, just to say a little message to Sarajevo and say hello to them. But I can't come because I'll be killed at the checkpoint, but our associate can come, Bill Carter. And they wrote back and said, yeah. And then I'm like, oh my God, how do I get to Italy? I have $200. I'm stuck in a war. I don't know how to get out of here. This whole process took about 2 weeks. I did get out. I got over to Italy, and then I'd been in war so long I kind of forgot reality of life, which is nobody cares about the war at the gelato store, even though it's an hour away on a plane and there's genocide happening. It was totally a disconnect, and I was totally unprepared for that. So when I got to the gate with my fax that said, we want to meet you, that's all I had. I didn't arrange like a pass. I'm like, hey, to the Italian guards, I'm like, I got a pass, I got to get in there. They're like, get out of here. And they wouldn't let me in. So I did the next sensible thing you can possibly do. I punched him. And then he punched me back, and we got into a fight. And that brought out the American heat. They have military Americans as their inner security. They came out and said, hey, what's going on out here? And I said, I got a fax, fax. They're like, oh yeah, we're waiting for you, get in here. So I interviewed Bono. I just was like, I just want to do this message. He basically, in the middle of the interview, which is on that DVD, which I don't know if I have you or not, but he said, who are you? What are you doing here? How did you get into this building? And I think he figured out that I was not, he kept thinking I was Bosnian. I'm like, I'm not Bosnian. And he's like, okay, how did you get in here? I said, I told him the story, and he's like, okay, I like that, you're a gambler. If you would have come in the front door, you never would have gotten in this room with me. And then from that moment on, we decided to, they wanted to come to Sarajevo, and I decided you can't come to Sarajevo because everybody's going to die to come see you, so you can't come. So they said, think of something. And I said, okay. And 2 days later, I wrote them a long letter saying, instead of you coming to Sarajevo, we'll bring this war to your concert every single night while you're on the road, to 80,000 people a night. And that's what we did for the entire summer, to millions of people. And I had people tell their story. I did the testimonial on TV. Regular people, I had them talk. And it was a huge effect on politicians. It was a huge thing. And we did that. And then we made a movie called Miss Sarajevo, and it was an amazing thing. And the reason I'm telling you this, because when I came back from that war, I was completely fried and totally emotionally screwed up and physically and neurologically damaged. And so I went fishing in Alaska. Because again, the most sensible thing you can do is absolutely exhaust yourself to death so you don't have to think. And then in Alaska, when I went fishing, I learned about Pebble Mine and all the stories up there. And then when I went back to Bisbee, I'm like, wait a minute, my garden's poisoned, and Pebble Mine is more important than my town. And so all these things are connected. And to me, as a writer, the most important thing really that survives is story. So you have to tell a story about this place. And you have to tell it collectively. And that will get people's attention. You know? I've heard a lot of things, a lot of facts, a lot of details and politics about this issue. Whatever, I'm like, okay. But then suddenly someone tells me a great story about their experience in the Boundary Waters. I'm like, I'm listening. That matters, okay? I would kind of work on that story. I don't know what it is, you do, I don't, but I work on it. Before we all drink, questions and answers. Oh, right there.
I came here for wolves, but no, I'm kidding. What do you know about wild rice? And obviously copper, I would assume, would be poisonous to it, but I have heard that the acidity, that it doesn't take much to raise the acidity beyond the ability of wild rice to live. And I have always heard that this is the world's greatest wild rice growing region.
I'm gonna have to tell you that I absolutely know nothing about that.
Okay, but I mean, I've heard this from somebody else in the other part of the state, but isn't Minnesota the world's greatest wild
What's your
rice
state's
growing?
grain, but I don't know if it's...
California's largest
Yeah,
producer
right.
But wild rice.
there,
the
but
actual-
wild rice isn't the largest grain, it's the way it grows wild.
But I don't think you can just grow wild rice anywhere. It is wild, it is a wild food, and it goes right along with our,
Well, I mean, let's just put it this way. If you were to get into a situation where the wild rice was affected, lots of other things would be affected as well. You'd know it.
No, but I mean, wild rice actually can be affected, this is what I have been told, at very low levels of acidity rising in the water. It goes. And- yes,
It's
okay.
actually a sulfate that
Right.
drains out of tailings basins that kills wild rice. And it's polluting most of the streams around even the taconite mines. So, and it is a big issue for the Native American culture. And they have a big influence on whether or not we're going to have a mine.
Yeah.
And it's not the acid, it's the sulfate that comes out of the tailing stations. It's a big issue, it's being brought up, it's being studied, and it will be part of the decision.
The Native Americans would be very important to any coalition you have. I'm sure they're involved with you, but yeah. Yeah.
A lot of conversation about the impacts in a variety of areas. What do any of these other communities do in the way of taxation efforts to set, like Alaska did, a permanent fund for its own people, but also to require deep, continuous indemnification against this kind of damage? Local communities in Alaska have taxes on the pipeline-related activities. Rural governments up there do, as does the state of Alaska, as does the federal government. But at the lowest impact level, like Peavey, like Bisbee, like any of the other communities, if there was a small indemnification tax levy specifically for the purpose of managing the impacts of copper, any of these other communities ever tried to do anything like that?
Nope. They don't have any of that. I think probably, I don't know the answer of why not, but because they don't do it, I suspect it's a state issue, not a local one. What they do instead is they make deals with the copper mines, the copper companies, sorry, and for other things. Most of these things, by the way, guys, are not obvious for a very long time. So, you know, if you're driving by, you're like, okay, that looks really bad, but hey, you know, it's a copper mine, and that's what things look like. It's not, you know, there's not some big sign that says there's a whole lot of stuff leaking right now into your water shed. It's not really like that. So I think that the towns generally take the other deal, door number one, which is, hey, we're going to sponsor that, you know, 4th of July. We're going to build your school again. We're going to, you know, blah, whatever it is that they are going to do to help you out. You take that because that's immediate to door number one. It's immediate to the city, the town council, the mayor, and it's kind of a bargaining chip with your own community. The other stuff, the more bigger stuff you're talking about, unfortunately, requires foresight. Not something I find in abundance in many territories of our existence.
You know, I was born in Peavey.
Uh-huh.
I lived, my dad was a miner.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've seen reports in the area newspapers about how we have high levels of asbestos, you know, like products from and that show that there's a, you know, more cancer in the Iron Range area than
Right.
some other areas. And I had, I was just curious about what your health issues were when you were living in that area, because I was feeling sick about maybe 8 years ago, and I just, you know, wasn't feeling right. I thought there was something wrong with my system. So I went to the doctor and I told them about that. They checked my blood, they couldn't find anything. So I went to someone who did natural health, and they did a check of my, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but they do like analyze your hair.
Mm-hmm.
And when they analyzed my hair, they found out that I had like 3 times the level of lead and aluminum.
Yeah.
All these things were built up in my system. And because I have this particularly sensitive system, they were showing up maybe quicker than it would
Right.
something else where you did cancer in 20 years instead of.
Well, Bisbee has Sierra Vista has a really high, you know, there's a couple places in the country that have a very, very high level of child leukemia. One of them is, it's in Nevada, it's Finley or Fern, I forgot the name of it. And another one is Sierra Vista, which is about 30 miles from Bisbee. Most likely everybody thinks it's actually, both those places have one thing in common, military jets. So there's a feeling that might be coming from benzene. But in terms of Bisbee, I tell you what, I've been to a lot of mining companies, like Morency's been around for 100 years, 125 years. I can tell you right now, I have heard so many stories of people who have died early, their parents died, not in mining accidents. That's kind of happens occasionally. That's actually to be very fair, the mining accident ratio in copper mines is very impressive. It's very low. So that's one thing they kind of have going for them. They're usually very safe in terms of truck driving and stuff like that to human beings in the working there. But I think that, listen, we all live in a planet that's we're doing things in this planet that are basically going to eventually kill us, aren't we? We don't even know what it is yet. We're going to find out tomorrow that the cell phone is, brain cancer. So, I mean, part of me worries about it, and part of me says, oh, I don't have time. Just live life. So, I kind of do this game where I try to make a smart move when I can, and then don't worry about the rest. And to me, moving out of Bisbee was a smart move. I left. Mostly for my kids. If I didn't have kids, I probably would have stayed. Let me tell you something. The hardest talk I ever given in my life was in Bisbee. These are my friends. This 5 times this room, and I knew every single person there. And I just wrote a book about how their town is poisoned. And they all own homes. And they're like, but you know what? They all knew it. And so they all were like, yeah, you're right. Morency.
So, first of all, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story. I think it's very easy to jump on the negative train.
Yeah.
And talk about indemnification and what that means, and say, hey, we need to have a better story. In your experience, have you seen anyone put together the positive value of nature's impact on the health of that community?
Yeah, yes, Pebble Mine's a good example. There's an ecosystem there that is, man, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything except for don't screw it up. And it absolutely gives you billions of dollars, food. You don't have to do anything besides show up and do hard work. Don't screw it up. Don't build a dam, and don't dump a bunch of chemicals in the river. That's a system that's obviously, the plus side is absolutely enormous. I would say here, it goes back to, I think I asked that question about how many jobs. I got a feeling you don't have to do a lot besides get up at 5 in the morning and go canoeing, and you're going to make money here, right? So, go canoeing. and keep those jobs and tell that story as being more important than 300 jobs. Because here's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't hate copper miners, and I know we need copper mines. But sometimes you gotta figure out if the place that you're gonna build it is the right place. I know it's here, we all know it's here, but is the right place right here? I don't know if I'm pointing, but is the place right here? Is this the right place? Next to a place that's already thriving? Maybe not. The Chilean desert, for instance. I'm not trying to be flippant, but the Chilean desert is the largest producer in the world of copper. It's the biggest copper belt on planet Earth. 300 miles. Biggest mines, it's incredible. There's not one human being that lives there that's not attached to the mines. There's no human beings there. It's like Mars. It's like absolute Venus. It's a totally burning rock.
You think that it doesn't affect anything else?
There's no one,
Besides people.
There's no water there.
It affects, so it just affects, that's like no man's land, it's unconnected.
It's the driest place on Earth. It's the Chilean desert. There's no people there. There's no indigenous people there. It's just kind of a weird place. Happens to have a lot of copper. Southern Arizona? I make an argument into this book philosophically, which is really addressing what you're asking. I personally make a choice. If someone were to ever ask me, which they never will, if you could put on the scale and say, here's Pebble Mine, would you open it? Or would you give up Bisbee, Superior, which doesn't have a mine yet, but they want one, open up Ajo again, open up Rosemont near Tucson, we're very dangerous. I'd open every single one of them before I open Pebble. Because Pebble's in front of a natural, massive world resource. These places are all mining companies. They're all mining towns. Every one of them was built for a mine, a copper mine. So I would open those again.
Well, I'm just wondering, before saying that stuff about how it requires foresight and all this stuff, what about the foresight that we should change the whole thing?
Oh, that is the number one foresight we need?
Well, you're just talking about about how don't worry about the copper and all that stuff in it. We use copper mines and stuff, but like maybe the problem is that they want to change the way they live. I mean,
No, I've talked about that.
no, I don't know. I just like I don't understand like what you're saying because you said like that mines in place and stuff. It's just like that's where the mine should be. You don't put it near like these cities and stuff.
What I'm saying is, okay, let's take the example of green energy, right? Solar wind. Okay, in the best of all worlds, we'd get the solar wind tomorrow, right? Like we would have solar and wind tomorrow, and then we'd be they would provide the national grid of electricity, and we would be heroes. It'd be like this world would be an amazing, better place. It doesn't get there that fast. It might take 50 years for the whole operation to change because of the way this world works. I don't control that. I can't control that. What I'm saying about copper is we need it right now. If we need it right now, okay, we got to find places that we can do it isolated and safe and not near, let's say, precious water sources or things like that that humans really need to actually live. I'm not saying we need to find a replacement. I don't know what it is. Yeah. I'm open to it. I want to find it. And to be honest with you, I think copper mining companies would like to do this stuff safer. They just don't quite know how. But you're asking a very deep. What's that?
I don't believe that at all. I think they kill every last one of us.
No. Okay, you can think that. It's okay. But I don't think copper companies. Their mission statement is to make money, and if that means. If that meant killing you all, I mean, I don't know. It's a personal statement about workers. I'm not going to make that statement about them. But my point is, I want us to get to another place, and I think people are working on other technologies, for instance, to replace copper, but it's not here yet. And until then, we have to figure out this equation. Because if we just say it's bad, philosophically, I agree with you, 100%. We need to change the game of how we consume. What are we doing? But it takes a little bit of a jump to get there, and they're small jumps. Unfortunately, it should have started 100 years ago, but here we are right now. I'm not trying to be cynical or flippant. I'm just saying these are lots of steps. Look, the example I give is organic food. When I grew up on a farm, I didn't have any other choice. I didn't understand what non-organic food was. We didn't have that stuff. And then when I got to college and you bought organic food, you were a snob. Like, oh yeah, you're really fancy. You eat organic food, and I'm gonna eat all this other stuff. And now it's starting to change. Now people are really, really reaching out to try to find organic food. They like the farmers market. Everybody goes, not just the people that are snobs. So that took a while. It took a generation to get there. And now people really value it. And I think that this is the conversation that I think it takes a while for human beings to crack open.
Just from a timing standpoint, you said Pebble Mine is this watershed. If this goes, it could be a domino kind of thing. Where are they in the process?
It's a really good story. The really good news is that, really quick, in April of this year, the final draft statement from the EPA came out.
What state is this?
Alaska, yeah. The final EPA statement, it's not the final, but the last draft, came out in April. And it's absolutely, completely damning. It's not even like halfway damning. It's just like, this will kill the fishery. That's basically what it says. And it'll kill these cultures. Now, the most important thing, I've said this everywhere I go, the most important thing you can do, because you really don't have a role, unfortunately, in this thing, unfortunately that's out of your guys' hands, is the comment period. It's really your one time to really jump in the game. And I think you have one coming up very soon, in December, I think, or January. And in Pebble Mine's case, all the coalitions really, really pumped the public about this. You got to make comments. I traveled the country over and over. We got 1 million comments. 1 million. Which were overwhelmingly against the mine. 1 million comments, and by the way, this is a little bit of fun news for you too. It was about 85 to 86% against the mine. Of the other 15%, which was about 185,000 comments for the mine, 90% of them came from one place. Where would that be? Oh, I know. It was actually a building owned by the Koch brothers. Yeah, as ugly as that is, that's the truth. It came from their building that they own, and they were pumping this out, saying it'd be good for jobs and whatever. And anyways, my point is Anglo American, who is the big boy involved, they're the big company, like Glencore, but they're bigger. They pulled out about a month ago. I think the statement was too damning. There's too many comments. They already put $1 billion in, and they just walked away, and they own absolutely zero of that mine. They just lost $1 billion. And now what's left is a junior company with no money, and this is a $15 billion mine to build. So unless a major comes back in, it's it's looking better and better. But we also know that we need to get the 404C, which is basically the Clean Water Act, to be in place, which will probably come out in January. Back in the back.
Yes. Well, one thing, they're talking about 300 jobs. Walmart's opening up in Mountain Iron, and they're saying we're going to hire 300 people.
Right.
So, the jobs is a moot point.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and I don't know if you know, have you ever heard of Wally McRae?
No?
He's a rancher in southeast Montana, and he's been fighting the coal companies for years because they contaminated the water and driven ranchers off their land because they can't water their cattle, they can't grow hay. And if you think that mining companies are fairly benign, there was a report that just came out of ABC News that Johns Hopkins University was getting paid $750 an X-ray to deny black lung claims from coal miners in Kentucky and West Virginia.
I don't think mining companies are benign. Yeah.
And your point of that we need to take it beyond Ely, we need to take it beyond the Iron Range. There are people out there. I mean, I'm a farmer. I ranched in Texas. I know what water's like. I mean, they kill each other for water.
Yeah.
And I mean, up here, people have something. Well, there aren't any farms up here. Who cares? Well, there's farms in Manitoba, and there's farms downstream on the Mississippi, and they're all impacted by it.
Sure.
So the people, like the letter that was in the Ely Echo about a month or so ago saying outsiders have no right to tell us what to do.
That's beautiful. That was an argument they used at Pebble too. Yeah. Because they want to isolate you and use your various factions against each other.
The water is an important thing, and there's a lot of people out there who are fighting these same issues that really need to be brought in.
They do.
Say, hey, it isn't just Ely, it isn't just West Virginia, it isn't just Montana.
And I'd add one more thing to that. Your people, I know there's a proud tradition here in the iron ore range, right? And I know that's a really difficult place to reach out to, but somehow, there's got to be people there that understand, or want to understand, or will understand that this is not in their favor. Is that common? Probably not. But it'd be nice to, I think there's a way to listen. You have to listen a little bit, take the blow, and then kind of speak back. If we become the American Congress up here, where they can't decide to pass a bill to make a sidewalk crossing, it becomes really hard. Yeah.
I see a lot of our politicians from up here in Minnesota seem to be swinging towards the copper companies.
Mm-hmm.
Did you run across this in any of your checking around with the politicians going the way the
Here? Or in general?
Well, Rukavina wanted to raise the 10 milligrams per cubic liter up to 50 or more. And we saw a couple of our national people pushing through another bill, and they get really irritated with all these permits coming up.
Yeah.
And they sound to me like they want to facilitate this thing really fast.
They do, and the thing is, I don't get it. I mean, I do get it, of course, money. Yeah. I get okay, that's money. What I don't get is, it's 350 jobs. It's the shareholders. You're not a shareholder. Maybe you are, but I doubt it. These are people that live in other countries, and they're going to make up millions of dollars, and you're going to have holding the bag. So why do your politicians screw you? I know the answer, guys. It's rhetorical, okay? Yeah.
You talked about other countries, and my question has to do with the laws in other countries, because here we hear that they'll follow all the environmental laws, Minnesota has high standards.
Yeah.
But they're still not high enough, it's gonna put
Yeah.
10 milligrams in the water.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'll tell you, the other countries in the world,
Yeah.
for the most part, there are no laws, and you just rape it, and you basically pay off the totalitarian 30% of the mine, and then you go whatever you want to do, kill the people, whatever you want to do, pollute the shit out of it.
you know, they'll follow those laws, but then they don't know that the fine can be paid if you don't follow the law.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little example. John Shively, the guy I told you about, he ran Red Dog Mine, biggest zinc mine in the world up in Alaska. He ran that place. I asked, he had a federal judge for years. They gave him 612 federal citations for the Clean Water Act. 612. And they just paid the fines. It's cheaper. It's built into the cost-benefit analysis. They're going to be, they're advertising, we're going to be really great to your water, blah, blah, blah. And when they're not going to say, man, I'm sorry. They're just going to pay Minnesota, the state of the agency in St. Paul, they're going to write a check for $150,000. That infraction's gone. What's next? That infraction's gone. What's next?
Bill, one thing to keep in mind about John Shively,
Yeah.
he also comes out of the culture having been the chief of staff for.
Oh, I know, and he lied. He got busted for that.
And he was one of the frontmen for the larger Navy corporations.
Yeah.
I voted for Shively.
Nana. You did? Oh, that's great. He got caught in that lie, too. Wait.
Can I just make a little advertisement for this?
Advertise.
If you haven't read Bill's book, you should. We've got it here. It's a donation to NMW for $25, I think. Pick it up, read it. A lot of the questions you guys are asking, a lot of it's answered.
Yeah, it's in the book, yeah.
But that's great. It's great.
The other books are here, too, guys. I highly
Books
recommend.
are here too. And just one comment about what you said. One of the arguments has been, okay, we mine it here under strict environmental regulations, and you're mining it now in Russia, nickel, and it's terrible, pollution is bad. Do you think they're going to close that mine in Russia if we start mining it here?
No.
The premise of that whole argument is so without basis that
Yeah.
it doesn't make any
Another one they like to use is, if you don't, we'll take our business somewhere else. They like to say that. It's not necessarily here, but it's something they say in America. If you don't let us mine here, if you make this EPA stuff too hard, we're going to leave. Oh, you say that, you hear that a lot. Unfortunately, the truth is, they're not going to leave. There's a couple things about America that mining companies really like. There's not a civil war every 10 years. A rebel group doesn't kill their workers. Well, you know what I mean. Yeah, maybe, but what I'm saying is they like the stability of the American labor market and the American, once they know the laws, then they know how much they have to pay, they can kind of stay on schedule. In other countries, you might get nationalized, and then you lose your mind. So they actually like it here, they just don't like to say that they like it here. They don't like paying as much as they have to pay here, but they still like the consistency of the place. That isn't helping your argument, but I'm just saying it's part of the deal about industry. They actually like it here. And we have a lot of copper here, unfortunately, in Arizona especially. Whatever you got.
So,
Yeah.
the politicians are bought, basically?
Well, that's not an old story.
It seems like it, and it seems like they're playing off of the responsible citizenry of Minnesota to do it right here. We'll do it right here, so
Yeah.
we don't, put our bad habits on,
Africa.
We have to use cell phones
Yeah.
onto.
I know that's. I don't think it's not a news story. Politicians are pretty predictable people. I can assure you that if for some reason the environmental impact statement was negative and there was a bit of an EPA flu-flaw and they started to threaten to say no, your politicians would be like, you know what, I don't think that's a good idea. I just don't think that's a good idea. Because then they're going to want your money back, which they are now losing. So, this is not, come on, house of cards, man, right? Yeah. That's what they do. It's pretty simple, I think. Yeah.
Would just a large body of fresh water be a sufficient topic that you could build a story around? We're sitting on a lot of fresh water. When the rest of the world is
Are you?
I'm not talking about playing in it or canoeing in it or swimming.
Yeah.
Just a resource. Wetlands, lakes, rivers. We've got a lot of
Yeah.
They're running out of water in Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Yeah. Well, sure, I'd tell that story. That'd be a good one. I mean, you know, fresh water or clean water is a really important thing, and that's more than worthy to tell that story. You know, Pebble brought in all kinds, and I don't know how you guys can do this, but they brought on all kinds of people to do all kinds of studies. I'm talking about the opposition, about tundra and water and travel, and they did all that stuff. They brought a lot of pros in there to bolster their argument. But they had a lot of people pay for it, like the NRDC and other groups. I don't know if you guys got that. So, I think right. Huh?
No earthquakes.
No earthquakes, which.
We've got a very big problem with earthquakes.
Exactly. Then Pebbles basically would be organized around 3 faults, earthquake faults lines, and there's a volcano that's been blowing up for about 2 years, about 80 miles from it. But it's going to be fine. You know, they want to build 3 earthen dams, okay, taller than the Hoover Dam, that will hold back 10 billion tons of waste. And like your 500 years, they go beyond that. It will do it forever. Yeah, they will do it for eternity. What? You had a 9.2 Richter scale earthquake in Alaska that liquefied the planet under their feet. It turned into liquid. That thing is not going to survive. It's built to 7.5 on the Richter scale. So, I mean, that's just silliness. Yeah. Here? Here or when or what has it been like? Right from the go, they're extremely, okay, there's a lot of pages, right? It's like 73 pages.
Like, were they bad?
Very, very bad. It boils down to 2 kind of things in that statement that really say a lot to me and to a lot of people. One of them is kind of emotional, and one of them is kind of just factual. The factual one is they say, if you do nothing wrong at this mine, not one industrial major accident, which basically all mines have, because they're big machines and they're big holes and they're big, you know, toys, and they fall over and they do things wrong. If you have no accidents at Pebble Mine, not one accident in 75 years, you'll ruin the fishery because of just leakage. So that's not good if you're Pebble Mine. That's a very damning statement. The other one, which I thought had a very emotional impact and goes more to the story, is they said, this native culture is the only culture left on the planet that exists subsistently on salmon. And to threaten that is not acceptable. So I don't really know how the EPA won't do the 404C veto. I don't know how they could not give it to them. Just keep in mind though, in the entire existence of the EPA, which is more than 40 years, they've only vetoed this kind of situation 13 times. So you have to have a really strong case to get the EPA to take that sort of federal action. And I think Pebble is rising to that occasion right now.
Bill, someone told you 6 months ago that Anglo-American would pull out Pebble Mine. Would you have been very surprised? Or
I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't believe it at all. There's $500 billion in the ground.
was that just astounding to you?
It's astounding. And it came from the numbers. 1 million people. They did it. I know that you guys are all looking for maybe 20,000 or 3,000. I don't really know what you're looking for, but I'd shoot for higher if I were you. And maybe you need to reach out to all the people who come here and enjoy it that now live in California and New York, and you need to find a way to reach them. And I don't know how to do that, but maybe you guys can figure that out. I'd reach to those people and say, I need you to make a comment. Social media, Twitter, stuff like that. I would reach into that world. You got to have people on all your lodge list. You know what I mean? I'd reach out to people and say, we need your help.
I would have said that's impossible. Almost impossible. They would have pulled out, and they pulled out. I guess there's hope.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable they pulled out.
I would have laughed at somebody 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
It's staggering. Yeah. It blew everybody away. No one saw it coming.
The local mine company talks a lot about their proposed mine being underground,
Mm-hmm.
and the storyline is that is a really good thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your perspective is on
Well, it is a good thing in some ways. It's more of an aesthetic thing. You know what I mean? If it's an underground thing, you don't have a massive hole. But the problem is, and the story that's not being told because they don't like to tell the whole story, is that quite often underground mines suddenly turn into open pits. Maybe not now, maybe in 10 years. They're like, that underground mine wasn't that great. We got a little bit out of it, but all of a sudden now they're like digging into the earth. And since it's already permitted and you guys have already accepted it in some way, then they can do it. I'm not saying that they're doing that. I have no idea, but it does happen. But in terms of the process of copper, the extraction of copper from what it's attached to, it doesn't really matter if it's underground. Because they still got to bring it up and process it and still create leaching fields and still create tailing dumps and waste rock. And that's where the stuff is. That's where the copper itself is probably, it's just going to go into a product. The other stuff they're going to leave there. And that's the stuff that's full of uranium, cesium, arsenic, everything else is in that waste rock, in those tailings piles. And that's going to be above ground. That'll just be in big piles. Morenci has 7,500 acres of tailing piles. Like literally the entire horizon when you drive into Morenci. It's not the mine, it's the tailings piles. And it's being sprayed for decades, every single day for decades with sulfuric acid. Just raining down on it, and it's bleeding copper out the bottom, plus everything else that you can imagine. Yeah?
You just made reference to a leach-based type of mine.
Yeah.
Are you aware that the polymer mine, they're planning on doing a flotation?
Right.
That's totally different.
Right.
It's a recycled water where you don't have the sulfuric acid sprayed over the rock.
Mhm.
It's all similar to the taconite process.
Well,
The
I'll tell
only
you.
difference-
Yeah, go ahead.
let me finish.
Yeah.
The only difference between their process that they proposed with the polymer mine and our process, taconite mine that I work at, is once it goes through the flotation process, we send it over to be processed into pellets.
Right.
They send theirs to be basically electrolysis onto ignits, which then goes to a refinery and get cooked down.
Right.
So where you're talking about the sulfuric acid being sprayed over these tailings basins, and poisoning the soil, yes, in those types of mines, that's what happened. In this type of mine, that isn't going to happen.
That's not your
Not that it isn't going to happen, it's highly unlikely that it's going to happen.
But that's not the problem. Sulfuric acid in the leaching is just a process of getting the copper out. They actually contain that. The problem you have at somewhere like Polymet, which is an open pit mine, is not that they're going to use that basically a self-contained water system is what they're saying. It'd be contained.
It's like our mine, we recycle our water.
Right.
Any water that leaves our property has to meet the state standards for drinking water because the city of Virginia actually gets their drinking water from one of our.
But my question is, here's time out. Time out. Taconite, copper, they're completely different. What I'm trying to tell you is what you're extracting in the process to get the copper. Okay, let's leave it alone. Let's leave it alone. Let's not worry about it right now. Let's say, okay, it's great. It's recyclable. It's state law. Blah, blah, blah. Over here is 8 billion tons of rock. Okay, it has to be somewhere. It just came out of the earth. Let's not worry about this. Let's say that that's pretty well done. It goes in, it goes in copper concentrate. It's shipped off to China, maybe. I don't know. This over here is their problem. They don't know how. This waste rock, copper does not come alone. Copper always comes with things like uranium, arsenic, heavy doses of this stuff. This is the stuff that's in all the soil in my yard. This right here. This waste rock right here, this waste rock pile is what they have to, and a copper miner will totally admit this to you. This is what they work on all the time. This is what they have to figure out how to stop either through diversion, tarps, whatever.
Typically, it's a rubber membrane.
Exactly, right. But, rubber membranes are really nice, but I've been to many mines where those rubber membranes broke. So this right here might work for 20 years. It might work for 40 years. No one on the earth is going to remove this. No one's going to sit there and go, we got that tarp down there that's broken. So we got to move now 8 billion tons of rock over here where we have a better setup, they're just gonna figure out a way to move it maybe somewhere else, help divert it to somewhere else, maybe less exposed or something like that, pay the fines. This is their problem. They have this down pretty good, especially that's not a really, to me, that's not a big mine. It's not an Arizona scale mine. This is your problem. And this is what copper mining, this is what hard rock mining, how it differentiates from what you're doing. This is sulfide mining. They don't know how to deal with this.
They blasted that rock out of the earth. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're crushing it, you're taking the copper out, and yes, the arsenic and everything was in there when you're crushing it and you're taking the copper out, but it was already in there. They're not putting the arsenic.
Oh no, they're not using any chemicals.
Okay, but so what stops, say, freeze-thaw cycles, they crack rock, ice expands and things cracks.
I'm going to tell you the answer. I know where you're going. Let me just tell you the answer, okay? It's really important. A mineralized deposit, when it comes up from the planet 150 million years ago, like copper, when it comes up with this stuff. It gets attached. They all come together. When it's in the planet, under our feet, it's not touching air. It's not starting to decay. It's basically in stasis. It's just sitting there. You're not really part of it. It's not part of us. It's under our feet. As soon as you expose it to air, okay, or running water, so like rain, then it starts to bleed hard until sulfuric acid runoff. This is not a myth. Copper miners know this. This is their biggest problem. This is something they honestly talk about as a problem, is how to contain sulfuric acid drainage. In the first 20 years, that pile's not that big. So, they might have a handle on it. Then it becomes bigger, and then you have to make another pile because that pile's too big, and all of a sudden you have a place with a lot of piles. And then you have a bit of a problem because now those minerals that were once trapped under the earth were never a problem, and now they're sitting on the earth, and they're a big problem, and they don't know how to stop it. That is a copper miner's honest problem, and they know it. They're very open about it. That is the thing that they're always trying to solve. It is going to happen. Not this process we talked about, the copper extraction of the little copper and the copper concentrate. That's probably going to be, unless they have a leak in the pipe or whatever, it's probably going to work. This is the main problem of sulfide mining, is these problems.
Over there, that big pile, the big difference is that the surface area is huge.
It's enormous.
I mean, you think you blow something up into a million pieces, the surface area is considerably more than what the water's laying there.
And there's also, I'm not trying to directly talk to you. I'm not trying to pick on you. Is it those heavy metals? They come with copper. They always come with copper. They're going to be there. They know that already. That's okay. They know what they got ahead of them. But they also know that there's not an example of a mine in the world, and if there is, I would love to hear it from yourself or any other copper executive. There are no mines. There are no copper mines on this planet that are not leaking sulfuric acid out into the watersheds. It does not exist, except for maybe in like the first 2 years of their existence. If they have a choice, either they're trying to fix it or they have to pay the fine. And they're trying to do both. They're trying to do both. They're trying to fix it, I think, and they're trying to pay the fines. And they do this game until they run out of control. And I'm not sitting here saying that I don't agree with it. They're trying to poison us. They're not trying to leak that shit into the earth. It just is kind of part of the process that they haven't figured out because the scale of it is enormous. Just enormous. And if you don't believe me, go to Arizona.
Let's go to Arizona, you can go out on the spruce road. Where Inco dug a test site back in
Right.
the 70s. It's out there right now. I also worked in Minnesota's taconite industry for many years. They are not discharging within Minnesota's standards. They are violating Minnesota standards because they get variances.
Which is common in mining states.
All the taconite tailings
Yeah.
ponds are leaking. In general, they're out of compliance. They get variances.
Right.
Our regulating agencies don't care.
Which is very common, and Arizona has the variances, Nevada has them, New Mexico, Utah, because they're important economic engines, and so they do this all the time. So thanks for pointing it out. I kind of wasn't going there. I was trying to go there, but that's a really good point, because they do get that all the time. So whatever they're selling you about it's there's ways around that.
Yeah,
Please?
I'm curious about public opinion in Arizona, because public opinion on this is going to be very important here too.
Yeah.
But if we had, say, your Senator John McCain walked in the room right now, or a pollster who could poll all of Arizona, what would public opinion be? And what would John McCain say about copper mining in Arizona? Has it been good for the state or bad for the state?
I'd say he would say very strongly that it's good for the state. I would say you'd have a hard argument saying it hasn't been good for the state, because it kind of built the state. The journey of copper mining in the state has been really rough. They broke the unions. Arizona was really the state that broke mining unions. I mean, there's a state, they broke those unions. They did it on purpose. They spent 2 years on strike, and they made a plan, and they broke it. And Arizona's not had a union again. You can't have a union in Arizona at a mine. You can have an organization at that one mine that, you know, you agree to get paid so much, but it can't transfer. It doesn't. It's all mine to mine to mine to mine. So, and if you haven't noticed, that's kind of a movement right now around, is to get rid of unions, whether it's teacher unions or whatever else. But I'm going to be really honest with you. Arizona, there's no way for me to sit here and argue and tell you that copper mining hasn't been a driving engine of that state. It really has. But there's a cost for all that, and it's starting to change. I mean, it depends, of course, like here, region to region, and where you're asking that question, but it's starting to change. The Tucson mine, okay, there's 3 mines right below Tucson. They're all been there for 50 years. Endless fines for dust and everything else. They're going to build a new mine there. And Tucson's, I would say it's 60-40 against it. City council's against it, various people are against it, but it has a strong chance of going through. For the same, it's really hard to fight these things. I think the biggest problem there, when I went there to talk to them, is they don't have a really good argument against the mine, except for the water, which of course is a great argument, but they're making a really good move, the mining company, by buying this water, but it's taking the steam out of that opposition. Because they don't have a story anymore. They had a jaguar. We have jaguars in Arizona, which is a very rare endangered species in the United States. They really only exist in Arizona. And there was one living on the mine site, but that wasn't enough for endangered species. Well, if you get endangered species, it's over. I mean, you can't. No mine can be built there. But it's a high level to get that. But I would my point is, I think it would be. It's been a big part of Arizona's history.
And can I ask about the evolution of the way mines process?
Yeah.
Was the town that you were in, where the soil and everything polluted, was that as a result of smelting?
Smelting.
And has the copper industry there moved to any of these new, I don't know, what did you call this?
Well, it's a flotation.
Flotation. Yes, that's very popular. Morenci kind of created it, invented it.
Right. So do you think that the soil around those mines would still be safe using these new methods or not?
Well, the flotation
We know smelting,
smelting's gone.
We've seen
Yeah,
smelting around.
smelting's kind of gone in the United States. There's only one left. It's in Arizona. It's in Hayden, and it's belching out a lot of poison. But there's only one left. What you're asking is kind of what he asked, which is the new process, electrowinning, or this process. It's definitely a better operation. They also have.
What's your overall impression of that?
Oh, I think it's a better process than what they were doing. But let's take Morenci, which is seen as a very sophisticated, high technology mine. They do have the sulfuric acid rain showers, but it's a contained leaching field, and then they use the water again. It's a big recyclable. It's a huge self-contained water system, right? They just keep using the same sulfuric acid, and they bleed the copper out of that sulfuric acid concentrate into their big tanks, flotation tanks. It's just an endless cycle. Here's the problem, guys. Okay, here's the problem. When you have a big mine like this, you have things happen that you didn't really predict. For instance, you need a lot of sulfuric acid, usually to process copper, whatever process, and they're going to use it. It comes in a train to Morenci. And then it's driven by various trucks to wherever it needs to go. Well, one time a truck fell into a creek bed and spilled 125,000 gallons of sulfuric acid into this creek bed and basically killed it. that stuff happens at mines. Now, is that bad? Is it going to recover? Probably. So, you know, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that that's Armageddon. These are the things that happen at mines. And what I'm trying to tell you here is not to scare you into like thinking that these are evil. I'm trying to tell you it's going to change the face of what this is here. That's what I'm trying to say. It is going to change the complexion of northern Minnesota. That's all. Will it? Will it change it a lot? Yeah, because copper mining is very different than iron ore. It's a very different process. If you don't believe me, take a road trip. You can take mine tours at all those places and ask them exactly what you're asking me, and they'll tell you.
Well, when you say it will change
You don't think an open pit mine right here is not going to change?
well, we have all across the Iron Range dozens huge open pit mines.
I'm talking about here.
Yeah, well, where the places what they're talking about aren't in the edge of town like they were where you live.
Mm-hmm.
They're 20 miles out in the woods.
What about mine is where I live?
We have all across the Iron Range. We have lots of big open.
I know.
Open pit
Yeah.
mines today.
Right.
And that wouldn't necessarily. That alone, I don't agree, is in and of itself a problem. I happen to agree with you that processing these ores is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, you need to go home and read a Google or whatever. You know, I don't really know where, if you want to learn more, but I would concentrate on the fine details of what hard rock mining is and hard mining rock extraction. It's very different, and it has a very different, because of what attached to copper that's not attached to other things, and it bleeds out heavy, and it's on the surface, and they don't know how to get rid of it.
Bill, maybe we probably ought to wrap this up sometime.
Yeah, someone's got to go.
Maybe like, could you speak to one other point, and that would be how the culture of mining has changed. I think there's a lot of nostalgia for the past, the 1960s, when mining families had big families.
Yeah, sure.
Filled up schools, and that culture has changed.
It has. You know, and Bisbee's really got a lot of those people, and I hang out with them, and they're great. You know, and they have great stories, and they have really cool stories about Bisbee when it was a really wonderful town for your kids, and it has all that. But today's miner is a different. I don't know about. I'm not going to talk about the iron ore. Let's just pretend I don't know anything about it anyways, because I don't. But the copper mines are different. This global market is fluctuating all the time. Let's take Morenci, the biggest mine in Arizona. If there's a mine that's stable, it's Morenci. It's in play all the time, 100 years straight. When the copper market shifts a little bit and goes down, those people all leave town. They're broke. They don't know where to go. They try to go to another mine. They can't go to another mine. They become tow truck drivers. They don't know where to go. It's a transient mind, and it creates a transient town. That's what's happening in Arizona because of the global market, and because of the way copper companies have become huge companies that don't really care about the town anymore. I'm not saying that that's true here. I'm saying that is happening in Arizona. You get a different culture. So even if you have a mine, you don't really have the roots that created those. In my opinion, you don't have the same roots of let's put our kids in school and we're going to build a home and blah blah blah. It's not happening as much. They still come to the towns when the mine opens and to get a job and get paid, but they're ready to go to the next place when it happens. And that's a shift. That's a little bit of a shift. And Phelps Dodge, when they used to run Arizona, they would take the hit. If the global market went down, they would take the hit and keep people employed. They kind of had a family vibe. Freeport McMoran was like, you're done, fired, bye. So they pay you more, but they get rid of you faster. And it makes it tough. It makes it tough for miners' mind. It takes them, because you gotta live somewhere, right? You gotta believe in it. And it's sad, because I know a lot of these guys, and a lot of them are retired, so they kind of live the heyday and are done. And they like to get to Burger King and drink their coffee and tell stories. But I ask them, would you live in Morenci? And they're like, absolutely not. The place is a hellhole. And these are guys that mine their entire life underground. That's all they did. And they're like, I would never go there. I would never live in a. And the reason? I'll tell you the reason. Their reason is that the unions don't exist anymore. And if the unions don't exist, they'll just eat us alive. And that's why they say they'll never work in the mining camps again. So, and again, I'm not a miner, and I don't work in I belong to a union, just not a mining union. But, you know, I don't know the issue here with mining, but, you know, I mean with the unions, but I would keep an eyeball on that too.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
We gotta close it up.
Breathe for a little.